Hello friends, I'm coming to you today with a couple of announcements, both coming out of last night's session meeting. For those who don't know what that means, the session is the church's board of elders. It's our main council where we make all of our decisions, and they made several decisions that I want to tell you about. The first is related to the plans to restart in-person worship. Well, it's bigger than that, but it includes that. As we announced in last week's worship services, the plan was to restart in-person worship services this Sunday, June 28th. All along, the session knew that we would review our own decision for that plan at the June meeting and to confirm the decision to move to restarting or to postpone that decision. Well, last night was that meeting, and the way the language worked, the actual decision was to confirm or to postpone the decision to move to a new phase of reopening the church. And in that new phase, phase two, we would open the whole church throughout the week for more people to meet together, and we would also restart in-person worship services. And we had already outlined the criteria for making that move, and it included seeing the COVID-19 positive cases on the decline. But I'm sure you've been seeing the news like everyone else, that not only has that not been happening, but the opposite has been true. It's on the incline. But you should know that even then, the session still had the ability and the freedom to suspend that criteria and to confirm the move to phase two beginning on Sunday. But in the end, after much discussion, the decision of the session was to postpone the restart date for a few weeks, and which means that we will remain in phase one until that time. I wanted to say a word for those who are not familiar with how we make decisions here in this church, because it's worth noting that our decision making in the church is not dictated by any one person. It's not dictated by me as a senior pastor or any of the other pastors or any of the elders. Rather, we have in this church, in the Presbyterian Church, a plurality of elders who are elected by the congregation to discern the will of Christ for this church. And this has been a pattern for the church throughout history. If you think about it, you think back to, for example, in the book of Acts, in chapter 15 of the book of Acts, there's this council that took place in Jerusalem where they were trying to decide what to do about the Jewish converts, or the converts who were not Jewish prior to it, who were Gentiles. And they made that decision at a council, at a gathering of the leaders. Or think about the story of Ruth in the Old Testament when the town elders gathered at the gates to make the decision that ultimately allowed Boaz and Ruth to be wed honorably, and then how that led to the lineage that gave us the great King David of Israel, and then ultimately and most supremely the King of Kings, Jesus himself. Now, it may not have been the Lakeland town gates where we met, but it would be as if our elders were here at the doors of this church, humbly discerning and declaring what they saw and what we understood to be the will of God. Well, this session has done that. Was it a unanimous decision? Well, not quite. But we had great discussions for, great discussions against moving into phase two. And then most importantly, I want you to know this as well, all also understand that the session has voted and all stand behind that decision. So our new plan is for moving into phase two is setting a date for July 19th. And in the meantime, your pastors we're all thinking about ways to connect those who are ready for devotional gatherings that fit the current phase one parameters. I know I'm ready for this, and we're going to keep you posted as plans for that unfold in the days and weeks ahead. The second item that came out of last night's meeting was one that I want to not only tell you about, but also ask your prayer for over the next couple of weeks, because I find this to be a very exciting reality. The elders have set a series of dates for the session to meet and to articulate the vision of this church for the years ahead. Not to put too fine a point on it, but let me say it this way. The next few months of this church will set a course for the next 5 years. That's how big this feels right now. The session will have 2 days of retreat in September, and we've engaged a facilitator to help us sort through all of the responses to the recent and the upcoming. By the way, there's an upcoming set of town hall meetings. You'll be asked to participate, so watch for that. So they're going to sort through all of that information as well as the data that has been prepared by the current and past vision committees. There's a lot of information to process, but the goal of having all of this information has always been to give us a clear understanding of where we are as a church, where we are as a city, where we are as a culture, including what is happening in the larger church. It feels like, and it is, I think, a big moment for us as a church, because the question is, who is this church at this time, and what are the focus areas for us as a church in the years ahead? Well, you're going to hear more about that in the weeks and in the months ahead, but I wanted to let you know that it's coming, and to ask you to pray for your church, and to pray for your pastors, and to pray for your session. Well, that's it for now. Remember, as always, remember, God loves you, and so do I.